Hello everyone and welcome back. Thank you for joining in again. I started last time with some news that we're experimenting with some Twitch streaming as I go through the series. So I'm pretty excited about that. Hopefully it'll work out pretty well. So that's the new layout that you see. You see me and the Twitch related items with subscribers and all that fun stuff. So hopefully you all enjoy that. I'll have a link in the description below on the channel and links to be able to subscribe and join me while I do things live. So hoping just be a more casual atmosphere. Anybody can jump on, chat for a while. You can ask questions. I can go over different things that people might be struggling with. So it should just be a real cool casual atmosphere. If this is your first time joining, I appreciate stopping by. We are in the middle of building out a complete new platform. So I had an idea a while back to create a financial application. It's basically an automated trading platform that will do trades on your behalf based on some sort of algorithm that you choose, and it'll do those trades through your different brokerages you already have accounts with. So Robinhood, E-Trade, Ameritrade, all those brokerages, I'm hoping I can onboard to this platform and be a central spot. You can look at your account, look at your buys and sells, and then have it do trades for you on your behalf through those brokerages. So with that idea, I thought it'd be fun to document my journey through a YouTube series. So that's kind of what led us here so far. We go through everything in software development. So we have done some coding, we have done unit tests, integration tests, we've done DevOps work with building a code pipeline to build and deploy our application. We're using AWS as our cloud platform to host our code and run our application. So everything I do I have recorded, and anybody that wants to build the same exact software can just go through all my videos and just copy everything I do, and you'll have your own, hopefully, production worthy system platform. So with that said, last time we got started on some database operations. So up to this point, it's just been a simple Java application with no database interactions. So last time we set up a Dynamodb database through AWS. Dynamodb is only offered through AWS. It is their own NoSQL database. So we created some new security permissions with some new users and roles, and we created a Dynamodb table on what might be a good design so far with what we know. And as we move forward, we can go back and revisit that design and make changes as we figure out what all data we need. So with that said, one of the pieces that we get is a Dynamodb access token and access secret. So I've been thinking through like how I would want the application to know about those things. I've been thinking through in the back of my head as well, because I have that constants file that is confidential information for just me that I don't want shared on the channel or anybody to know about, because it's my own personal credentials to log into Robinhood. So obviously I don't want people being able to log into my account and so on and so forth. So I've been wanting to get rid of that code in my code base and instead have secret things like passwords, credentials be injected into my application from AWS itself. And I happened across the concept of a parameter store. So a parameter store helps us solve this problem. So we won't have to have any configuration or passwords in our code base. We don't have to commit it, check into Bitbucket or GitHub or code commit in this case. And this is just a nice way to separate out your configurations from your code as well. So another benefit to kind of elaborate on that, many times you might have your application deployed out there. You might need just to change some sort of configuration item. So maybe a password's expired and you need to update. Maybe it is pointing to a different URL, so they've upgraded to a version 2 URL and you're on version 1. All you need to do is upgrade to the version 2 and everything else stays the same. And that's just a property change. In the traditional world, what you would do is make that property change within your code and go through a full build cycle, build your application again with that new property updated, deploy it to a dev or test region, test it out, and then deploy it to production. That is really tedious and cumbersome for just a property change, because maybe you have some other features that you're developing actively and that's not ready for production. You don't want to release those other features, but you still need to get this property change out there ASAP. So you would have to build out a new pipeline maybe, or branch off a new branch for this release, so on and so forth. With a parameter store, you can separate out all of your properties and then just reference them in your code just like they came from a properties file. So for instance, if you have your URL in a property file, instead you can have it in a property store, save the key and value pair, and then you reference that within your code, but you don't have any property files in your code. And then what that in turn does is, if you want to change your URL, you go to your parameter store in the AWS console, go to that parameter and update the value, and then release that out, and AWS takes care of updating your apps and restarting them, so on and so forth, to have them get the new value. So it's just a really clean way to handle configuration items, passwords, credentials, all that fun stuff. And that is basically the topic for this video. So I want to set up my parameter store. I want to specifically get rid of my username, password, and device token from within the code. And then I also want to add in the Dynamodb access token and secret as well. Then we'll do some code to retrieve those parameters that we set. Our first pass will just be dummy values, test 1, test 2, test 3, just to make sure that they've been injected in. I'll log them out to make sure that I can retrieve them. Then once I prove all that out, I will update the values to the real values, and then that should still allow us to log into Robinhood, allow us to retrieve the Dynamodb access token and secret, so on and so forth. Another item I want to mention, and I'll explain this a little bit more as we get to the code part, but sometimes you'll have different values for each one of these properties based on the environment you're in. For instance, your dev username, password, or URL might be different than your production username, password, and URL. And Parameter Store also takes care of those things for us as well, and how we define our parameters. And again, hopefully here shortly that will make more sense to you as you see how this all gets tied together. All right, so the first thing we do, we've been doing quite a bit, we need a new IAM user. So up till now, our code hasn't actually called out any AWS services. So it has no database connects to, it doesn't access any AWS resources. So we haven't needed any programmatic access from our application to AWS services. In order to access our parameter store, that's AWS service, So we do need that programmatic access. So we're going to create a new IAM user, put it in the admin group, and give it the programmatic access, which will give us an access token access secret. So after we get that, we'll go ahead and get into the parameter store and create our 5 parameters. And I'll create a couple extra just to show the dev versus prod differences. And then we'll do some code layer items to retrieve those parameters, update our endpoint. So we have a test services endpoint, which basically goes through integration tests that we can invoke via REST, either Postman or browser. So we'll update that to make sure we can retrieve our information and parameters correctly and pass those test cases if they're able to. And then after all this is done and everything's working correctly, we'll go ahead and update the parameter values to real values. So let's jump into number 1. So I am in the AWS console, logged in as the admin user. So I have access to all of the different functionalities within AWS console. So I can set up different users and parameters, so on and so forth. We'll go to IAM. We'll create a new user. Username, we'll say admin program access. It'll have programmatic access, so we'll enable access key and access secret. Next, go to the permissions. We'll add the user to our already existing admin group, so it should have all the admin rights. We won't give any tags. I'm not really worrying about tags at the moment. We'll go back and add tags once we get more of a dev versus prod environment set up. Go ahead and create the user. So I will bring this over to a different screen to copy down the access key and the secret. All right, and pull this back over, and we have a new user. So that's the first part done. Our next goal is to set up our different parameters. And a real quick tangent, I suppose. I did want to check the price to make sure this is going to be a cost-effective idea. And for Parameter Store, there's 2 different types of pricing. There's actually storing the parameter, how much that would cost, as well as how many times that parameter is accessed via an API call, either setting parameters, retrieving parameters, so on and so forth. Luckily for us, the storage for standard is no additional charge, so it's free. As well as API for standard without any high throughput, and this is all placed up anyways, is no additional charge as well. So for now, until we scale up and have lots and lots of users and making these calls many times, we won't be charged anything to use the service. And I like free, so good times for us. And I'll have a link to this in the description as well. All right, so The AWS service that has the parameter store is actually Systems Manager. Type that in to find, and we'll go to here. On the left hand side, we see Parameter Store, so we'll click on that. That should give us all of our parameters in our system. So we'll go up here to create our first parameter. So the first thing we do is give it a name. So I'm going to say this name will be Robinhood. We'll say Robinhood.username. No, I take that back. So this has to be in a specific name format. So another little tangent. I'll have a link to this guide as well. I assume developer of some kind. Figured out a lot of this groundwork for us. So he's using AWS Parameter Store and integrated within Spring Boot. And this is sort of the guide I was planning on going through. He kind of talks about some of the benefits on what it's doing. He uses Gradle as a build tool. We use Maven, but it's all the same dependencies. So there's also going to be a new bootstrap.properties file that we'll put in that sets these properties. And what this says is every prefix, every parameter will have the prefix /config. And we'll keep that. So our parameter will start with /config. The next is the name of the parameter store itself. This is sort of where all these parameters are housed. So for now, I will do alt/. This is just to enable it, which is going to be true. And this is a separator for profile. So again, going back to different profiles within your application, you can have a dev profile that would run and have all your properties configured for your dev environment. You can also have a prod environment with different properties. And so this is saying how those profiles would be separated. And this is an underscore, which is fine for us to keep. If you don't have any active profile set, it just defaults to this base profile. So if I wanted prod, for instance, this would have underscore prod. But for now, we'll just have this be our base profile. Now this is where we can say Robinhood.username. We'll give it a quick description. Robinhood username to test with. All right. So this is some of the cost things we went through here a little bit. So there's standard and advanced. Advanced is if you need more advanced features. And we don't need to get into that too much at the moment. We're just using basic stuff. So standard would be fine. And I will get nowhere near 10,000 parameters anytime soon. So there should be plenty of parameters for us to play with. The next is the type of parameter it's going to be. So you can have just a string, which is maybe a URL will just be a string. Maybe, I don't know, just different headers or different types of things within your code that's referenced as just a string. You can also have a string list, which is a comma delimited list of values. And the third option is a secure string. So this is going to be encrypted within AWS, and then when you retrieve it, you can say I want to have you decrypt this parameter before I can use it. And it will check to make sure you have the right permissions set to be able to decrypt parameters, so on and so forth. And so this is obviously what we would use for passwords and credentials or any type of PI information that we want to have encrypted. With this, you can do a few different options on how you encrypt it. You can use the default KMS, which is Key Management System, I believe. Or you can use a different accounts KMS. And you can also create your own KMS access keys and such if you want to control your own security. For us, whenever we use secure strings, we'll just use the default KMS and the default key ID. And then down here is where you'll put the value you want for that parameter. So Robinhood username, I don't believe this really needs to be encrypted or not. So we'll keep it as a string. It's a text, and the value would be Robinhood username for now, just as dummy text to make sure everything can be used successfully. Review everything real quick, and this all looks fine. So we'll go ahead and create this parameter. So we'll look at this real quick. When you click in here, it gives you different information about the parameter. It gives you the value. If you chose secure string, this would be starred out, and there'll be a button to unhide the value. It'll say when it's last modified. It keeps track of versions. So every time you update this property, it'll increment the version. And it'll tell you who's the last person to modify this parameter. And it gives the data type and description and the obviously name of the parameter. So let's go back and go ahead and create all of the different parameters we'll need. So alt/Robinhood.password. Robinhood password to test with. Since this is a password, I'll go ahead and make this a secure string type. And value would be Robinhood password to make sure it all works. Then we'll update this to my actual password later. Hit create. 2 down, 3 to go. Robinhood device token. Robinhood device token to test with. I'll make this a secure string as well. So I think this should be a bit more secret. And we'll say Robinhood device token for the value. Next, we will have Dynamodb dot access.key. This is our access key. Access key, well, we'll say Dynamodb access key for dev. This will have just a string. It doesn't need to be encrypted. Dynamodb access key. Create this guy. And then we have our access secret. Dynamodb access secret for dev. This we do want to be a secure string. Value, we will have Dynamodb access secret. Say create. And then for demo purposes, I'll just create a couple others. This would be underscore prod. So this would be showing we can do this as a different property for our prod environment. And we'll say Robinhood dot we'll do Dynamodb. Dynamodb dot access dot key. And this will be our Dynamodb access key for production. String would be fine, and value would be Dynamodb access key prod. That way you can see it being a little bit different. And if you notice, the only difference in this parameter name is the underscore prod. So everything else in the name is the same identical property. We'll create one last one for access secret, I believe is the same name. Secure string, Dynamodb access secret prod. Create. And that is all of our parameters. All right. So this should be our second goal complete. Now we need to be able to retrieve all of this stuff from within our application. So there's a little bit of setup work to do that, and then code to inject in those values. So first, what I want to do is have our application be able to communicate with the Parameter Store and AWS. If we look at this person's guide, they're using this Spring Cloud Starter AWS Parameter Store config dependency. So I went ahead and looked that up. So that's this guy. The latest version is 2.2.2.release. So we will copy this into IntelliJ. So in here, we'll go to our POM. At some point, I'll need to clean up all these dependencies to make it easier to navigate around things. But for now, we'll just put it in here. The next thing we need is this bootstrap.properties file. So after adding in this dependency, it's going to look for a bootstrap.properties file in our resources. And this will configure that dependency to do what it needs to do. One moment, I seem to not have video. And we're back. Hopefully I haven't been off video for too awful long. Alright, so this bootstrap.properties will be needed from our dependency we just added to say how it's configured. So let's go to IntelliJ, go to our main applications resources, create a new file called bootstrap.properties. Copy these 4 properties into here. And we need to change this Parameter Store name to match what we put. And as you all go through this, this could be whatever name you guys want. This is just the one I chose for my business. So we have the bootstrap.properties file. We have the Maven dependency. So we're going to go ahead and do a Maven clean install. Then we're going to see if we can run this. And I am expecting us not to be able to run it. So we haven't given it any of our access tokens and such to know how to log in and have access. It just knows that the dependency is there and this is some of the information, but it doesn't know anything else. So if this is just running on somebody's computer, like our desktop here, it has no idea like which account to go to get the parameter stuff, or if it has access. So it built fine, which is good. Let's go ahead and go to app. We'll run this through IntelliJ. And again, I expect this to throw some exceptions. And there we go. So through an exception, security token including request is invalid, 400, so on and so forth, which makes sense. So there's also this blog post I will put in the description below, and it talks about how to set up your credentials and such to access the AWS Parameter Store. It's a little bit more unique, so it has to have some special access. So it uses a separate credentials provider chain, and it looks for your access key and secret and region and such in very specific areas. So it looks for them within environment variable, system properties, so on and so forth. We will set up in a run configuration in IntelliJ to inject in this information. I believe if it's running in an EC2 instance, it will give the credentials through that. So when we deploy this to our EC2, it'll know the access key and such based on where it's at. I haven't tried that yet, so hopefully that all works out of the box and we don't have to mess with anything. But so let's go back to our client library IntelliJ project. Go to edit configurations. Alright, and in this there's an environment variables section that we will need to plug in some information. So we will need our access key, our secret access key, and then the last piece is our region. So for me, my AWS account and everything is set up in US East 2. So this will know which region to reach out to get our parameters. And these two fields I will fill in my other screen. I hit apply and OK to save those environment variables. I don't know what live coding is. I have not seen this before. I'll have to check that out sometime. Let's go ahead and rerun our app. And now we should be able to start up successfully without any exceptions. Fingers crossed. And while this is going, a couple other neat things about the Parameter Store. You can actually integrate that into other AWS services. For instance, CloudFormation, you can integrate in to say what size your EC2 instances are, things like that. So when you do your CloudFormation, you have to say, like, I want to, whenever I set up this environment, use this EC2 instance for dev, and a separate size maybe for production. Set up all your different configuration items for your environment. Those can all come from your Parameter Store. So again, that separates out your configuration separately from your CloudFormation service. So if you ever need to change your CloudFormation details, all you do is go to your Parameter Store and update those values and push those values out and let AWS take care of the rest. So we failed to start up. Our port 8080 was already in use. So we will create a new file, application.properties. Server.port equals 8081. And try again. Start at my app in 15 seconds. So this should show that we're able to connect to our Parameter Store and retrieve parameters if we want. So we'll stop this. And next we will update our test services endpoint to inject in some parameters, log them out to make sure we can retrieve parameters. So let's see, this was test controller. I'll clean up some blank lines while we're here. Private boolean test parameter store. All right. And we'll return true at the end of this. All right. So the way you would access your parameters is the same exact way as you would access them within Spring if they came from a property file. So whenever you have a class, you can do @value. Whenever you create your beans, your arguments can have the @value, so on and so forth. So all your regular Spring injection annotations work. So what we're going to do is say @value. and this will be, I believe, the name of the parameter after these slashes. So we'll have dynamodb.access.key private string dynamodb access key at value dynamodb.access.secret private string dynamodb access secret. So when Spring starts up, it should inject in these two strings from our parameter store. So let's go ahead and do if, let's see, if our DynamoDB access key equals null or is empty, return false. And we'll do else ifs, why not? Secret equals null or is empty, return false. Otherwise, we'll return true and pass this test. And we will say logger.info testing parameter store. And we'll also, just to test this out, say DynamoDB access key and our secret. All right. So now we need to add this up here. So if, I'm getting OCD. Make all of this consistent at least. So if test parameter store result plus equals parameter store passed. Increment our pass counter, else result will be parameter store failed new line end fail plus plus. All right. So let's rerun our app and it should build it for us. While that comes up, we'll go ahead and get our Postman set up. So we update our port to port 8081. App is started. Let's go ahead and send this request. I have my parameter store is passed. If I look at my values, this is what we set for my application or our parameters. So everything worked fine. Just to show you the prod stuff, let's go to our application properties and we'll say Spring profiles active equals prod. Start this up. So this will have our profile be production or prod. And this should access the prod parameters and not the dev parameters. So up here, just to point out, it does have the prod be our active profile. So that worked fine. Go back to our Postman, hit send. And my parameters are from the production properties and not the dev properties. So this just shows how powerful this parameter store can be within your application. I made no code changes. All of these stay the same. And all I do is change the active profile. And this I won't have in my code or a property file. This will come from CloudFormation. So I have that say what our active profile is for that environment. So by updating that, it will have everything be configured for our production environment, which is awesome. So something I want to do real quick is go back to our parameter store. We're in prod still because it's still running. I haven't stopped it. So I want to see if I go here, go to edit, put a 2 at the end, save changes. Now I'm on version 2. I'm curious if this updates it in real time. So I'm not sure. Postman, send. And let's see what our console spit out. Alright, so it did not spit out 2 at the end. But if I stop and restart from scratch, it probably retrieves all the parameters and then caches them within memory, if I had to guess. Which is good to know. I assume if it's deployed out in an EC2 instance, it'll do sort of rolling restarts of your EC2 instances to get that new property come up. That'd be something to look into once we get to production hardening kind of stuff. Send another request. Oh, yes, we didn't do the active profile prod. Spring dot profiles dot active equals prod. Stop and restart. Send this request again. And we have prod 2. Awesome. So updating that parameter, whenever we start our app, it picks up that property. Stop that, get rid of that property there. What else do we need to do? So I think now we need to update all of our properties to be the real values that they should be. Something I'm thinking is that this will probably break our integration tests. So our integration test actually tries to log in to Robinhood with the username and password. We would have to have a run configuration that would connect to a parameter store to retrieve those. I think for now I'm fine with the broken integration tests. I think the value this brings us is pretty good. I can have the hard coding still for the integration tests. It's kind of ugly, but I'll probably just remove it and just let those break for now, and we'll address those at a later time. Alright, so let's go back to our parameter store, and I'm going to take this to the other screen and just update each one of these properties with real stuff. Yep. And I'll take this other screen to not flash up any confidential stuff of mine. Robinhood username, edit. Robinhood password, edit. Save. So that's those. Now I need my database. So we'll just do non-prod. So Dynamodb access key, edit. Paste, save. And my Dynamodb access secret. Paste and save. Alright, and last thing I'm going to do before pulling IntelliJ back over, I'm going to go ahead and delete my confidential constants file or class. Alright, so I think I am good now. Pull this back over. All right. So I deleted my confidential constants class. I want to get rid of that guy. So now we just need to address our failing compilation errors. So I don't have this guy anymore. So what we can do is go ahead and Robinhood dot device dot token private string Robinhood device token. Robinhood username. And Robinhood password. So we have those three injected in. We can go ahead and put them down here. Username and password. Great. Let's go ahead and update the other things. So Control Shift O. Nope, that's not right. Control Alt O to clean up our imports. So that guy's removed for us. Okay. Make this a little bit simpler. I'm just going to copy this chunk. And update these guys. Alright. Control Alt O to clean up that import. And last place that I am or was using that class. Paste those in. And Robinhood device token. Username. And password. All right. Let's try to build this. Like I said, I think the integration test will probably fail. I'm kind of curious if we need any of this for the factory integration test, though. Yes, it does invoke something, so we'll keep it in there. All right, interesting. So this ran fine. Good to know. I'm kind of curious where it's getting the AWS stuff from environment variable. Interesting. All right, so a couple steps left to go. Let's go ahead and boot this up. Run our test services endpoint, and let's just make sure that all of those still pass fine. I suspect they will. And good, I don't have the one thing in here. Alright, so this did not like something. cannot resolve placeholder Robinhood password. Did I not get that in right? Yeah, this is not right. Robinhood password. So with that, I probably need to scrutinize these integration tests a bit more at some point. So it shouldn't have built and passed those integration tests if we couldn't get the password. What else is this doing? It invokes it, make sure it's not null or blank. Interesting. That'd be something to look into for a different day. Let's see if this starts up now. And this is why you always want to test things locally before committing it and pushing up code somewhere. Alright, we're able to start up that time. And our stuff still passed. And I don't believe I'm logging any of that information. I was just logging the Dynamodb stuff. So that should be fine. But my login still passed. So this does seem good. So it should have gotten the username, password, and logged in. Well, yeah, I don't want to log that out. Alright, so since I flashed this up, I have no viewers at the moment, so I will have to edit this out before I upload it to YouTube. But before I forget, let's go ahead and remove this logging. And it's just a dummy database anyway, so it doesn't really matter if people can access it. And let's stop that and clear all that out. Awesome. It's a little over an hour. I want to just wrap this up. Hopefully it won't take too long. I want to make sure I commit all of our work and see if I can get it to go through the build pipeline, deploy it out, and hit the endpoint from Postman. So git add dot get commit -m. We'll say added parameter store support and push that up. Awesome. Yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen the build pipeline. So let's go ahead and look at that real quick and watch this go through the build and deploy. So pipeline. Interesting. Oh, yeah, so it's in develop. So we need to go to code commit. And get this to master. Create pull request. So I think the code pipeline was set to master branch. So develop, go into master compare. I don't really care. Create pull request. Title, fine. Parameter store support. Create pull request. Oh, cool. So now you can view the progress of that. So before, when we started exploring this, Code Guru, they said there wasn't a way to look at the progress. Activity tab. Where is the activity tab? In progress. All right, we'll give it a minute or so. But I don't want to wait too long for this. Especially since code-wise, all we did was inject some parameters in. So I'm kind of curious if it would say anything and what kind of feedback it does give. But I don't think it's that important per se. I'm curious if it would, if you can look at your older pull requests and it still scans it for you. Something else to keep in mind. It's still in progress. I don't care at the moment. Fast forward, delete, source branch. Nope, I don't want to do that. And merge. Awesome. Alright, so it's still in progress, so it might still give us feedback even though it's merged in. So now let's go over to our pipeline and now our builds in progress. Cool. I'm hoping this shouldn't take too long. And that is a lot of logs. So let's try to get back to our pipeline. So we're able to build. That's good. So it looks like that all worked fine. Everything succeeded. So let's go back to our handy postman. Send a request. Bad gateway. Boo. Let's try to fix this real quick. So we changed the port here. I'm curious if that is why. Let's go ahead and delete this guy. Removed application dot properties. Push. Go back to our code commits, and we'll do a quick merge. No, I don't want to delete the branch. Merge. Done. So I'm thinking, while this is building, I know I flashed up the Dynamodb access key and secret. I probably won't blur that out and just upload this to YouTube. I'll just create a new Dynamodb user and just add it to the role. And I'll create a new access key and such, and I'll update the property in the parameter store. I'll do all that off screen. So let's go ahead and go to U. Alright, trying to deploy now. Alright, so it's completed. Let's try this one more time. Nope. Alright, so it could be our application isn't coming up healthy on the EC2 server. So those will probably be something for a different day. just want the output. So CloudTrail, what is the thing that logs go to? Not that. CloudWatch. That is the thing I want. Logs. Alright, yeah, it looks like it's a permission issue. Alright, so this would be something I need to look into a bit more. Probably won't do that on screen. So this would be triaging a bit to figure out what role I need to add where. So basically it looks like when I deployed it to the EC2 instance, the role it picks up is not authorized to connect to the parameter store. So it looks like it's getting this Elastic Beanstalk EC2 role, and I probably need to add the admin role to be able to get to the parameter store. But I'll play with that offline. But that's pretty much it for today. So I'll try to get this fixed up and back to working. Otherwise, we did pretty much all of our goals. It's a little over an hour long. So apologies for the long video, but I'm pretty excited about what all we're able to do today. Just a quick recap. We set up a new user for the connecting to AWS services from within application. We created a parameter store parameters. We were able to connect to AWS services locally using that new user that we created. We were able to retrieve the parameters from the parameter store. We were able to update our test endpoint to make sure we can retrieve those and pass or fail accordingly. We updated the values for the real values. So got that done. The integration test with Robinhood still passed fine. I'll probably put some print statements out just to make sure that all worked fine. But I would suspect it all did. Yeah, and we deployed to EC2, running into some hiccups here, so I'll fix that. But otherwise, this should be everything done that we need to get done. In the next video, I believe my plan would be Since we have the parameter stuff done and we have DynamoDB created and set up, we should be able to log into our DynamoDB application or through our application. Probably do some CRUD operations to make sure we can read and update and delete entries from our DynamoDB database. And then after that, we'll probably do some front-end stuff. I'm not a front-end developer, so some of it will be learning and experimenting and failing quite a bit and learning as I go. I'm looking at, I think, either Vue or React. I probably won't do Angular. I forget if React or Vue is the way to go nowadays. I'm not a, like I said, a front-end guy, so it won't be necessarily pretty and amazing front-end, but it'll be functional as we go through to build out everything, and then I'll call on some colleagues and resources and friends to help me through to make it all pretty and the right way to do front-end stuff later on in the process. So with that, thank you very much for joining and watching through. Hopefully you all found this useful and learn a new service from AWS. Otherwise, have a good day, good evening, and I will see you next time. And bye.